It is finally time to talk about the Angle Dynasty League. We got a few things to catch up on this league, and we're going to give you some really key information as to why we've been lagging on getting you guys caught up with this. But today, we are going to discuss our rookie draft. Angle Dynasty League is a 30-team real salary dynasty league, which means we have a full first and second round. 60 rookies are selected. Before we go into a few notes, first want to introduce both of the Angle guys are with me today. First off, Mitchell, how are you on this fine Sunday, sir?
Very great. You know, my favorite topic of dynasty basketball is the rookies, evaluating them, drafting them, kind of see their progression over the year. So this is the perfect way to kind of kick us off in the off season for our Angle Dynasty League podcast videos. So super excited to dive into this one with you guys. Even though I only had one pick, which is literally the last one at pick 60. And this year's draft, last year I was very involved. So kind of coming in from an outside point of view and really just excited to share my thoughts on this one.
I did very similar to you, Mitchell. I weaseled my way in on the very end of the second round and grabbed somebody that I liked and didn't have any other picks aside from that. I had 25 at one point, but did trade that. And perhaps that's something we will discuss in a future trade video because there is a ton of trades that we need to discuss. But, so a bit of a surprise this year is Braxton selecting higher than both Mitchell and I in this draft. So first off, how are you, Braxton? Are you excited to talk about your new rookie today?
Yeah, man. I was gonna say uncharacteristic for you guys to pick so late in the draft. I usually have nothing. I mean, I do find my way in. I feel like usually via trade during the draft, which is probably the worst time to trade for picks. But that's just kind of how it ends up. And I always approach things from like, what good are draft picks doing you during the season? So they're most useful when trading for them and you're getting actual players for them, which is probably not the best strategy. But dare I say this was like the most anticipated rookie draft we've had yet for the league for a couple different reasons. But this draft was so awesome and there was so much activity, like you said. So I'm really excited to talk about it with you guys.
Yeah, so a couple of notes on this. You visual watchers on YouTube might be asking, what the hell is this on my screen right now? We have migrated the Angle Dynasty League to a new platform known as Downtown Fantasy Sports. It is currently in beta, not open to the public yet. We at Angle are helping out behind the scenes, getting this put together. So for starters, I want to say a huge thank you to the members of the Angle Dynasty League. Migrations of this size are definitely not easy. Your guys' patience with us and understanding has been absolutely huge. So we thank you so much. And it's a whole nother reason why this draft was so anticipated. It was due to this change. We had to wait a little bit to start, but we finally did it. We finally got it done. So now we have this to show you today. So if you are interested in this platform, just, stick with us. We'll have lots of news and updates about the availability of this platform over the next, few months through this season.
I'll clarify.
Okay.
I'll clarify, Andrew. I'll just say, like, we aren't developing this, but like Andrew said, we're helping out quite a bit behind the scenes. So this is just something we're really excited about moving forward, and we'll have a lot more information on, just like you said.
Yep, exactly. And then, Mitchell, you had a point about the activity in regards to this draft and trades. You want to bring that up again real quick?
Yeah, I mean, as excited as we are about, this year's draft, there was a lot of movement, and it really goes to show the activity in our league. We're always engaged. We're always promoting trades. And part of it is because it's instilled in the league, right? It's a 30-team real salary league. So a lot of teams need to make cuts, make upgrades as their payroll kind of develops over the years. So in this particular draft, only 6 first-round picks are kept on with their original teams. So 24 out of the 30 first-round picks have been traded. It doesn't even account for the amount of times a single pick was traded. So 24 of the original first-round picks from their teams have been traded to different teams. So a lot of movement in the league, and it really goes to show how special the Angle Dynasty League is.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely, it does. And then in regards to the Angle Dynasty League, we so far each year have been done pretty well in regards to our turnover. First year, we lost 2 people. This year, we only ended up losing 3 people. So we bid farewell to Alba Berlin, the Bangkok Tigers, and the Kanazawa Samurais. and we bid a very warm welcome to our 3 new members. So first off, we're going to give a very warm welcome to our new team who actually picked first overall in this draft. The owner is Cinex. Welcome to the Taiwan Beer Hero Bears. So for those of you unfamiliar with this league, you're going to hear some crazy names. We allow you to name your team after any existing professional basketball team. Doesn't matter what level they play at, what country. It also doesn't even matter if it's a male or female team. If they're paid to play basketball, then it's allowed for you to use that team name. So Cinex went with the Taiwan Beer Hero Bears. We also have Mutombo, the owner of the Flint Tropics. I'm quite certain the Flint Tropics weren't a real team, but his reasoning for being the Flint Tropics was so convincing, and my love of the movie Semi-Pro is so strong that I allowed it to happen. So we have the Flint Tropics. Welcome, Mutombo. And then we have a latecomer who, thank you so much for your flexibility of being able to make it into the league. Shout out to Braden, the owner of the Victoria Titans. So those are our 3 new teams competing in the league this year. And I got to say, boys, we got some great new members. There's been a ton of activity and trades with them already. And like I said, one of the new guys was picking 1.1 overall in this draft. So pretty impressive stuff to see. All right, boys, let's go ahead and get started. So as I said, the aforementioned Taiwan Beer Hero Bears selected first overall, and he took Cam Boozer. I mean, Mitchell, we've been over this quite a few times. Cam Boozer is still your number 1 overall in both 9-Cat and Points League dynasties, correct?
Correct. And, we all share leagues together. So a little bit of outside perspective. In the 4 leagues that we share, Cameron Boozer went number 1 in all of our leagues, and 9 category leagues specifically, but same should be said for points league formats as well.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Very good. Now we have the New York Knicks who found their way.
Let's pause because some of you jumped over is number 1 got traded. So we can talk about this trade that he moved up 1 spot from 1.2 to 1.1 quite early in the offseason. We did have a dispersal with those teams. And I think in the dispersal, he took 1.2 and then immediately turned around and traded 1.2, a 27 first, which was your own first, Andrew. And then I believe that is Julian Champagny.
I think the better one, yeah.
Yeah, so Champagny on that $15 million contract, which may or may not be worth it at this point in the salary league. But I just want to get your guys' thoughts on whether you think there's a future firsts and a rotation player worth a difference between 1.2 and 1.1.
That's a great question. I mean, if it's my pick has been 25 or later the first 2 seasons. So, and I would hope that it stays around that range again. So it is going to be a late first. But it's the first did end up making it back to me for a little bit, and then I ended up trading it again. But I don't know. I like Mitch and I had Boozer in a tier of his own, and we still stick by that. And it feels like, especially on draft day or within draft season, that a role player and a late first didn't seem like too huge of a price to pay to upgrade up to Boozer. Whereas sure. I feel like it could have been a lot worse. What do you think about that, Mitch?
Yeah, because I mean, you guys know me in the Big 3 league. I had pick number 3. And with pick number 3 and 2, it kind of is interchangeable, whether it's you go with Darren Peterson or AJ DeBonsa, right? We've kind of seen it intermixed between some of the different leagues that we share. And I inquired the 1.01 owner on what it would take to move up from pick number 3 to pick number 1. And his asking price was Mark Williams, who we all have in the top 100. So all things considered, I think the Taiwan or Cinex did a really great job value-wise, making a small price to pay with a late first, but also acquiring a rotational. I don't know if he's going to start with Tobias Harris in the fold now with the Spurs, but at least a rotation player on top of 1.01 for 1.02 and also the late first. So I don't think it's a huge price to pay, and I think it's a pretty solid win since we do have Boozer kind of on his tier of his own.
So just to clarify, Mitch, you said you'd like the 1.1 side, or you like the 1.2 in extras?
I like the 1.01 side along with Julian Champagny. Yeah, considering
on the other side.
1.01 by himself. Yeah, but one thing I will say, we had a lot of trades happen, and we plan to do multiple episodes covering Angle Dynasty League trades, where we're going to have all the graphics and everything shown from downtown on our screens here. So today's focus is not going to be that much trades. It's more so going to be how the draft played out overall. But we'll, of course, talk about that little bit of activity that happened at pick number 1 overall and how the new guy came in and immediately got himself into pick number 1 overall. So shout out to you, Cinex. And, he's been in constant contact with us about getting into the league well prior to where we had room for him to get in. So we were excited to finally get him in due to how excited he was to get into the league. But yes, we will most likely stretch it out to a part 1, part 2 covering 20, maybe even more trades that have happened in this league. It's so much easier for us now with all the cool graphics that we got from downtown Brax to show us all of the trades. So we'll definitely go into much more detail on that over the next few pods that you will see. A lot of trades have gone down, lots and lots of them. Big trades, really big trades. But let's go to number 2 overall, boys. The New York Knicks, shout out to Point Made Basketball. Their owners, Josh and Sam, are in this league here, and they got to take Darren Peterson at number 2 overall. So this pick originally belongs to the Flint Tropics, made its way over to New York for this season. So Darren Peterson goes number 2 overall. And then we have AJ DeBanza to the Toronto Raptors. That's our boy Slice. He is going 3rd overall. So Mitchell, again, not much of a surprise here because at least what I've said, I don't know if you're in full agreement with this, but what I've said is I feel Peterson and AJ are kind of interchangeable at 2 or 3. Maybe it'll just come down to, do you need a guard or do you need a forward? But I kind of have them at the same level. So is that where you're at with them too?
Correct. Yeah. And, it's really business as usual in the top 3. So yeah, no big surprises here. There was, I guess, considerations after Summer League because our draft did happen after Summer League when Caleb Wilson did explode with some massive numbers. And there's a lot of talks around like the dynasty community and circles that, hey, maybe after Boozer, maybe I do take a swing at Caleb Wilson at the number 2 spot or maybe at the number 3 spot. But in our instance, it really went business as planned, where Peterson went 2, AJ went 3, could have been interchangeable, and then Wilson here at 4. So where the draft really starts is here at 5 if you wanted to kind of continue forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, we have Wilson in 4. And one thing I'm going to do is slightly bully the teams who don't have their logos onto their team profile yet. So who is that? Is that you, Magnolia Hotshots? Yes, it is.
It is.
Add your damn logo. A lot of these guys, well, there's a few more that we're going to get to as well. I'll make sure to shame all of them today. Okay, but like you said, Mitchell, we are at number 5 overall, Darius Acuff Jr., and this is taken by the Sacramento Monarchs. Shout out to the owner, Nick Levin. And this is cool. Nick Levin is a real-life Sacramento Kings fan, and he lives up in that area as well. So this is him getting his guy right here. And it's good for Sacramento in this league. He's been going through a little bit of a rebuild. So I like the picks that he came away with out of this draft. And we'll talk about what he did in the second round as well. And that brings us to our friend Mark C., the owner of the Houston Comets. Mark C. is another Dynasty creator. He does the Punt Intended podcast for Sports Ethos, so make sure to follow him if you're not already. We have a few other content creators in this league here, but Mark was very active on this draft day with trades as well as picks of his own. I believe this is a pick that he also traded for. Yes, he did. He got this one from Magnolia. So the Raptors at 3 and the Monarchs at 5 were 2 guys that tanked and owned their own picks. So those are the only 2 out of the top 5 that never got traded. But we're at number 6 overall, which did get traded to the Houston Comets. And Mark went with Michael Brown Jr. over the likes of a Keaton Wagler or Kingston Flemings, Braden Burries as well. Let me go to you, Braxton. Do you kind of like the situation in regards to Brooklyn? Like, it's kind of anybody's ball game right now. Like, yes, you have the black holes of Julius Randle and Michael Porter Jr. on the same team together, which isn't the most ideal, but you just have such a collection of youth and other levels of talent that are still kind of trying to fight for their rotation spots. So do you kind of see Brooklyn as like an open door of opportunity to extract some dynasty value?
I mean, it's pretty crowded, right? They have the very ball dominant players in Julius Randle and Michael Porter Jr. They've got quite a few point guards. They've got quite a few forwards. They all want to get involved. And I mean, obviously Michael Brown Jr. is going to be involved, right? But something we've talked a little bit about in the past, and we talked a little bit about this during our draft live stream we did during the draft is like, how valuable is he going to be in a category setting? You know, is he going to be one of those guys that's more harmful than he is helpful? And I think that's very possible, you know, especially on this Brooklyn team who's not going to be very good. I think with the new tanking rules, you're probably not going to see Michael Porter Jr. and Randall sit as much as they would have last year, which is also not helpful for him. And then it just depends on how, you know, heavily they're weighing somebody like Yegor Demon's development in terms of at that point guard position. I think that could be someone that really affects Mikal Brown Jr. And, you know, I know we're not going to be able to go through every trade, but I think what was traded for this pick is very relevant in terms of how it's evaluated. And essentially this pick was, this was Peyton Pritchard, pick 14 and pick 27 for pick 6 and then 36, right? So quite a hefty price to move up to 6. And I think, you know, I mean, Mark knows what he's doing, but I think there's going to be quite a long payoff before you see Mikal Brown Jr. get anywhere near what Pritchard is doing now. So to me, it's quite a steep price, but if you believe in the talent, I mean, you're not going to have a ton of opportunities to move up and get these like really highly drafted young guys.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
To your point, Braxton, too, I think Brooklyn is going to look to win. I don't actually think that they have their own first-round pick. Someone can look it up. So it maybe even incentivizes them to not lean on Mikal Brown Jr. as much. Maybe Yegor Demon runs the point, at least to start the year, as Mikal Brown really starts to develop. And also, you know, Michael Porter Jr. and Julius Randle are going to get the bulk of the offensive workload, right? Especially since they are the veterans, they're going to be starting, they're going to need to win. If what I'm saying is correct in terms of that they don't own their pick, were you able to verify?
Yeah, I confirmed they do not own it.
Right. So it's a very risky part on the Houston Comets taking and gambling on Mikal Brown Jr., where the Brooklyn Nets can't really stay as patient as they traditionally would for like many other tanking teams that are rebuilding and have their own pick for the upcoming year. They're going to look to really try to at least make the play-in as competitive as it is in the Eastern Conference now.
Very good. Very good. All right. So that's going to move us on to number 7. Time for another no logo shaming. That's going to be the Seattle Supersonics. Add your logo. This is his own pick. He went with Keaton Wagler at number 7 overall. So far through this top 7, at least according to our big board, Mitch, it's basically been business as usual. I think this is the exact order so far through the top 7 of our final version of our big board. But Keaton Wagler, the Clippers is a very similar situation to what I paint the Nets to be in, because they also don't own their pick. They're not a top playoff contender, but they are likely going to at least try to win a little bit to not end up in that kind of purgatory range of the NBA lottery odds. But, well, I guess it doesn't matter for their pick anyways. I mean, what do you think, guys? Like, if you're a team who doesn't own their pick, then it's just like, do you essentially tank to devalue the pick that you don't own? So that, like, I don't know if there's going to be some weird strategies that come in here, because, like, that's something that's technically viable. If Brooklyn doesn't own their pick, and then they tank into purgatory, and then whoever does own their pick now has a crappy first-round pick instead of a top 5 one. Like, is that a possible strategy we might see?
Well, it could be because, and maybe we need to double check the new lottery rules. But if they finish bottom 3, are they draft relegated even if they don't have the swap rights on their pick? Like, are they not able to finish? Like, are they able to get a couple top 5 picks? You know what I mean? Like, because it's their pick.
2 top 5 picks in a row.
But then Houston has
the third year they can't.
Houston has swap rights with them, right? So technically it's their pick, and Houston can swap if they want to, right? So my thought is, okay, if they finish bottom 3 and then in the lottery, or sorry, not finish bottom 3, it's whatever it is. If they get a top 5 pick and then Houston swaps, is Brooklyn the one that's ineligible to get a top 5 pick the next year, or is it Houston? I think it's Brooklyn. So I think with that being said, I think you are going to see a lot more teams play throughout the season and really fight to stay out of that one bottom 3. But then someone who doesn't own swap rights on their pick, like Brooklyn, I would anticipate you wouldn't want to. Well, I don't know, because then if there's less of a chance to finish top 5 by finishing bottom 3, right, then there could be an incentive for Brooklyn to finish bottom 3 so that they can have a top 5 pick next year. So I think, Andrew, your point of there being maybe a lot of more weird tanking strategy is possible here. We need to double check the rules on that. But
right. I mean, and with that being said, if you here are, let's say, a commissioner of a dynasty league, and you guys are still undecided as to what to do, because what a lot of us in dynasty used to do is we would just mirror whatever happens in the NBA. So the NBA lottery, or at least the NBA end of season standings for the bottom 14 teams would be shown. You would then attach your team name to the team that finished in the same spot as you, and then wherever they ended up in the lottery, that's where you were going to pick in your league. Well, this doesn't work that way anymore. We can't mirror the NBA in that way anymore. So what we've done is, at least for this upcoming season, we are sticking with the old format in our league. So that means, tanking is still viable. All the previous odds that we were used to are still going to be there. And then perhaps during this year, we might decide on maybe a completely revamped new kind of lottery system. But for now, we're sticking with the old one, because across all of our leagues, we have not found a viable way to copy what's happening with this new lottery system. Like we can't replicate what's happening in the NBA longer.
That and two, I mean, we've talked about it. We don't have to spend too much time on this, but we've talked about in length why, kind of mirroring the new system wouldn't really be a great solution in fantasy leagues, right? You're seeing some of the stuff with the draft relegation, the multiple top 5 picks in a row, that, it's the NBA, in my opinion, is solving a problem that doesn't exist in 30-team dynasty leagues. So to me, there isn't much reason to make those changes, because it's not something that really is an issue, right? So obviously there are tankers, but it's not to the point where like the product is becoming worse, right? The way that the NBA is dealing with, right? So if anything, the NBA making that change and then not following suit in dynasty leagues is a huge win, because you're still having your players play down the stretch. And then you can follow those lottery odds that we kind of deem to be adequate or fair for us. So
yeah, agreed. So speed, power, agility, vertical leap, aggression, all the traits you want from your number 1 pick. And when you draft a generational talent, you don't fuel them with processed food and mystery ingredients. At least I don't. That's why my top pick gets Dash dog food, human grade, whole ingredients, and no additives. Use code ANGLE at checkout for 60% off your first order. Dash dog food. Fuel your champion. It's a learning process for everybody. I doubt that there's a dynasty league out there that has it perfect right now. But maybe once we get through this season, it's going to paint a much more clear picture. But let's go ahead and keep it going again. Let's finish out this first round and move on to the second. Now, we have Kingston Flemings going 8 overall. Shout out to the Providence Steamrollers for having their logo added. Thank you so much, Andrew. So I like that pick a lot. I like that Atlanta hasn't really, aside from retaining CJ McCollum, Atlanta's not bringing in multiple other ball handlers. Like, for example, we can look at Charlotte. Charlotte just drafted Christian Anderson. We were like, oh, wow, like maybe he's like not necessarily the de facto backup point guard to Kobe White, but there's not like another true point guard on the team. Well, now in comes Dennis Schroeder. So we haven't really seen anything like that happen to Flemings in Atlanta, which is quite promising for him. And I know when we had Noah Rubin on our draft stream, he said Atlanta needs either a big or a traditional, two-way point guard. And I would definitely say they got that with Kingston Fleming. So I'm really excited about that one. Shout out to Providence for getting him at 8. And then we continue on the just very, very interesting draft day that our friend McLovin and the Sacramento Monarchs had. So he walks out of this top 10 with both Darius Acuff and Braden Burries. I mean, Mitch, you can't do much better than that, right?
Really good haul. And to add a little bit more context, he did trade pick 16 and I believe pick 23 to consolidate and move up to take Braden Burries, which I think is a huge win, because at least for us, right, in our big board, there is a little bit of a drop off between all the guards and then the next following batch of players. So I think Nick Lovin really came strong with this draft, drafting Darius Acuff and then Summer League standout Braden Burries, who looked honestly the best of the bunch. I know it's just Summer League, but it's definitely encouraging to see that type of production and efficiency in Summer League, where, a lot of these first-year rookie players are entirely inefficient because they're all trying to make a name for themselves. But Braden Burries, I was super impressed on his poise, his shot making, and overall his sheer size as a two guard, right? He's like 6'4", 6'5" with pretty solid wingspan. So I think he can play next to Ryan Rollins and also Tyler Hero as like maybe like a small forward, or like a jumbo point guard, shooting guard. So overall, love the haul for Nick Lovin. And now at pick number 10, I think this is where it really gets interesting, where the Nelson Giants took Yaxel Linderborg. So any thoughts on that?
I mean, a little earlier than what we have on the big board for us, Mitchell. And Yaxel looked great during Summer League, and you can pretty strongly assume that there should be a good role for him in Golden State. They haven't really brought in a lot of competition for him to face in his role. And a lot of the competition that he has, let's say, in the front court is quite up there in age, such as Draymond Green, such as Al Horford. And then we'll see kind of just where Kristaps Porzingis is at in general with his health status. So it wouldn't shock me at all if the Warriors lean a lot of minutes into Yaxel, just because he seems to be the one kind of body in that front court that is physically capable of handling a large workload. So I get it from that perspective of the Nelson Giants. And I think that they are a team, too, that maybe is looking to turn around and compete pretty soon here. It makes sense to me. But then when we look at names like Graves, Okori, that went after him, I'm not too sure, but it depends on kind of I would have to look at his roster to see, how ready he is to compete or not. I believe this is Nelson's own pick. Yes, it is. He didn't make any trades or anything. So this is where he ended up from last year. I think he did miss playoffs. I believe he was taking. So we'll maybe take a look later down the road, Mitch, when we do a power rank video or something along those lines to see how ready this roster was to take in Yaxel, as opposed to waiting for an Allen Graves or waiting for a 19-year-old Ebuka Okori. We'll see. But that moves us on to the next player, which is Graves. He was taken by Dubai. And Dubai was someone who snuck into our playoffs last year. And if I'm remembering correctly, did he get a win in the first round, or did he at least just sneak into playoffs?
No, that was Boston who got
Boston
the win.
got the win. Okay, yeah. Those were those two bottom seeds that snuck in. I know one of them did well, but Dubai did get his way into the playoffs, and he's now walking away with Allen Graves from this draft class. And this is a pick that was originally owned by the Lakers, and this will be a trade we'll definitely talk about in the trade video. I know Lakers owner Phil sent pick 11 plus some other things in order to get Paolo. That'll be a big one that we'll cover soon. But that pick 11 ended up becoming Allen Graves. He's very interesting to me. Brax, have you looked much into Graves at all? He kind of strikes me as someone that you'll like a lot once he's up to speed.
Yeah, I mean, this Toronto team after post Kawhi trade, assuming that's going to go through, should be kind of interesting. There's some minutes opening up with like the departures of Grady Dick, right? In terms of on the bench, I should say, right? Kawhi's going to kind of slide into that Ingram role, and then kind of where the rest of the minutes are going to be allocated is kind of up in the air. I think Graves is really interesting, and I kind of want to pose a question to you guys because it seems like you guys are both higher on somebody like Mikal Brown Jr., Wagler, and Flemings than I am, whereas I would rather have the immediate four guys after that, probably before those three. Maybe it's like a philosophy thing for me. Those guys, those three guards I mentioned initially seem more like projects, younger. They might take a little bit longer to pay off, whereas somebody like Burries or Lendeborg or Graves or, even a couple of the guys after that, you're going to see much more tangible results very quickly. And to me, that's what I'm kind of looking at in a rookie draft. So like, for example, if I'm picking 6, I'm probably taking Burries, right? We saw in another league that we share, we saw Lendeborg go as high as 7 in another league. And to me, I'd probably rather have Lendeborg over these really inefficient young guards. So I kind of want to ask your guy, is it just the ceiling for those guards? Do you guys think that obviously Lendeborg is more of a floor guy, right? But somebody like Burries, I don't really understand why the consensus is a lot lower. Not a lot, but just the consensus seems that he's underneath guys like Wagler, Flemings, and Mikal Brown Jr. And maybe real life draft capital has a lot to do with it, but it's just kind of where I'm at.
Well, one thing that I will add is Burries is a little bit older. He's not a true freshman like somebody like a Keaton Wagler was. Brown's a little bit older too. So I would say that guys like Brown and Wagler are maybe have a little bit of a longer development path, but I mean, you could easily argue Milwaukee's in a similar situation to them too. Yeah, there's a lot of guards and ball handlers on both Brooklyn and the Clippers. Well, and Milwaukee also brought in, they still have Ryan Rollins. Kevin Porter decided to stay. Now they have Tyler Hero. Now they have Kasparas Giacomonis, and now they have Jaime Jaquez. So the picture isn't necessarily clear for Braden Burries too. And we actually, at first, gave them a good amount of a hit on our big board due to that, and then he rose back up again with his extremely impressive summer league performances. So I would say that yes, maybe the windows could be a little bit longer for some of these younger guys, especially like a Wagler, who a lot of his success will be dependent upon putting on strength, whereas someone like Burries is a little bit more physically developed than he is at this moment. But I really don't see their situations as too different from each other. I mean, if you're looking for someone who's probably going to play right away, like, yeah, Yax will be there. I think Flemings is going to play a lot more than a lot of people think. But, I mean, all three of Brooklyn, the Clippers, and Milwaukee are going through a retool, and all three just lost. Well, Brooklyn didn't really lose anybody, but both the Clippers and Milwaukee just lost their franchise players. So there's definitely some kind of a reset going on for both of them. So I don't really see a huge difference in their situations personally. I don't know where you're at with that, Mitch.
Well, to me, it's a little bit of like the delayed gratification where I know Yaxel, Graves, and well, I really like Burries. So I would actually put Burries in that same category as like Wagler. But like Yaxel and Graves, you kind of know that they're gonna be like top 100 players in their prime, and they're a little bit more developed on the way. But those guys like a Mikal Brown Jr. who could play like a Darius Garland or a Kingston Fleming, who is a great like two-way threat, and also Keaton Wagler, who a lot of people comparing him to like an Austin Reeves and maybe like a Tyrese Halliburton light. If you're willing to wait those 2 extra years, then maybe instead of that top 100 upside floor, you're looking at a top 50 upside. So I think if you're able to wait a little bit, and these are the teams who are taking them are a little bit more not ready to compete in a 30-team salary league, maybe it makes a little bit more sense to kind of take that gamble for the high upside play with that higher pick.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and a lot of it I think is probably that philosophical thing. Is like, is just hypothetically, is 4 years of top 100, is that better than 2 years of top 50? For me, yeah, right. But like in terms of production, right? But for some people, they'd rather have the 2 elite years, and we talk about this a lot with older players a lot, and we kind of as a group tend to value some of these older players a lot higher than some of the other people we see kind of in this space. And that's because, we'll take, I'll use LeBron as an example. We'll take that top 30, 35 production for 1 to 2 years over, 5, 6, 7 years of top 120, top 125 production, right? Because that's more easily replaceable. So there's pros and cons, I think, to both of it. But yeah, I appreciate you guys kind of entertaining my thought experiment there.
Yeah. And one thing I kind of a thought experiment I've been going through with you, Braxton, a little bit here is you seem to not be worried about all of these jumbo like wings, light bigs rotation that's happening in Dallas right now. So we have them taking Morez Johnson, a 6'9" power forward. Names like PJ Washington and Santi Aldama are still on this team. They still have Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, but you are actually, not too convinced that this is a big hit for names like, Aldama and them. And especially with the philosophy of them having a guy who likes to run jumbo lineups in the GM role and guy who likes to run jumbo lineups in the head coaching role. You think this is something where there's going to be a little bit to go around for everybody? Is that kind of where you're still at with this?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of Santi Aldama at the 3, right, which opens up a lot of minutes for somebody like Morez Johnson at the 4, PJ Washington obviously at the 4. We've seen PJ play the 3 in the past. I think he's more of a power forward than a small forward, but Dusty May, as you mentioned, has that kind of tendency to run those bigger lineups. Obviously, that connection with Morez Johnson is going to ensure that he's going to be on the floor. And Klay Thompson getting bought out and signing with Miami recently kind of opens up some minutes at the 3 spot for somebody like Santi to move down and for them to run those jumbo lineups. I still don't think Derek Lively is a long-term piece for this Mavericks team, and I don't think Derek Lively is a very good dynasty piece anyway. That's a discussion for another time. But they seem committed to having no less than 3 or 4 centers, rotation centers on the roster at any given time. So as long as they continue to do that, I'm not going to be worried about Morez Johnson at all. They're going to find minutes for him. And whether that comes at the expense of somebody like Derek Lively, it's very possible, right? Dusty might want to get his guys in there. The new front office might want to get their guys in there, right? Derek Lively's part of the old regime. So it's just not really too concerning for me.
Mm-hmm.
And just to clarify, Morris Johnson was taken by the Beijing Ducks.
Thank you, Mitch. I was just about to add that. Shout out to you, Beijing. Now, boys, us three on this stream here, all three of us placed within the top 7 of last year's regular season standings. Mitchell, of course, ended up becoming our champion of the Angle Dynasty League last year. But we look now at number 13, the Mexico City Capitanes, which, correct me if I'm wrong, he was number 1 in the regular season standings at the end of last year, correct?
Yes.
Pretty sure he was. But either way, this is an elite team adding an elite young scoring talent in Ibuka Okori at number 13 overall. So shout out to you, Gabe, the owner of the Mexico City Capitanes. Mitchell, does a move like this one intimidate you a little bit by a very good team?
Not necessarily, at least in the short term. I love it as a long-term play, but with these rookie guards, right, Corey was a true freshman, so he is going to take some time to develop. Usually in the first 1 or 2 years, these lottery level talent point guards kind of take a little bit of time to mature. Most of the time in those first 2 years, they're actually a net negative. So I'm not necessarily worried in the short term, but I do love that pick. I am a huge Okori fan.
And I think this is a great illustration of some of the parity in 30 team salary leagues and why it's probably the best format. I mean, him trading for this pick was purely because he needed to clear up some cap space. He moved Julius Randle and Cam Spencer for 13th overall. And in a shallower league, that could be crazy, right? But in a league like this where it's like, okay, I got to cut salary, I'm going to have to ship out a ton of production to do it. To get somebody, obviously you could dump Randall for nothing, right? But to retain that valuation on Randall and Cam Spencer, obviously, is kind of the thought. So you're literally swapping the production for the better salary and the youth there. And that's just kind of how the parity kind of stays maintained and manufactures activity, keeps the flow of the league kind of going, and the guy who had the 13th overall pick, which was the Beijing Ducks, right? He's gearing up more towards a run, right? So he made the pick at 12 for Morris Johnson. Okay, I got my rookie. Now I'm ready to get some production to kind of accent it. I'm going to take Julius Randle. I'm going to take Cam Spencer. And you're kind of seeing, teams kind of even themselves out. So I think this is a perfect illustration of why this format is so superior. And I think it's a great trade for both teams.
Salary leagues force activity and they force balance. Mitchell and I are in probably no longer going to be, but we're in a league that was a non-salary league that is most likely going to fall apart after a few years of being together due to now inactivity. There's no longer, or there was never salary in there. So there's not, salary changes forcing managers to make trades. And there was a little bit of imbalance with some of these trades that were made too. And some of these teams can be super teams and do whatever they want for as long as they want to, because they don't have a salary cap to abide by. So we've seen a clear example of how non-salary can go wrong. And salary just seems to always offer a really good balance and a really good long-term format for people to play. So if you're in a league that's very inactive, try switching to a salary league. It'll probably be a lot more jumping, especially because it's usually sickos who want to play salary leagues anyways. We at number 14 overall now, so we are closing out our lottery. This is once again the Magnolia Hotshots. Add your logo, Spazzy. But he did take Hannes Steinbach, so he's coming away from today's draft or the lottery with Caleb Wilson and Hans Steinbach, which is a really good kind of amping to the front court of the Magnolia Hotshots here. I really like that double pick there to round out the lottery for him. Brax, our resident Hornets fan, you get more excited for this season to start and see what Steinbach can do?
Yeah, I mean, I love what Jeff Peterson and Charles Lee have done with this Hornets team.
I love your guys' offseason. Your guys' offseason has been incredible.
I mean, I think they knocked it out of the park. We've talked about this a ton, and we talked about it on the Naz Reid Player of the Month. We've talked about it during the draft process. But the biggest thing for them was kind of size, and because they like Diabate so much at the 5, okay, they said we'll get bigger at the 4. We'll bring in Naz Reid. We'll bring in Hans Steinbach to be his direct backup, and they're going to get that size and the strength that they need down low because Miles Bridges was just not bringing it in terms of. He's a very small ball 4, right? But he was the starting power forward. So, I think Steinbach is going to be a direct backup to Naz Reid, at least for now. There are some people who think both Naz and Steinbach are going to kind of creep up to pull away some of Diabate and Kalkbrenner's minutes. I don't really think that's going to be the case. I think those two are going to kind of share an even split, and then we're going to see Naz Reid and Steinbach probably do like maybe a 30-18, 32-16 type split at the 4. Very clear what needs to have in there. Obviously, Grant Williams is still in the mix, so he may get some minutes here or there, maybe 12, 14 minutes, something like that, steal some from both. But Steinbach, I think, is more of a long-term play as opposed to someone who's going to come in and play a lot of minutes at the 5 really early on, which is what some people seem to think. But I really like this pick here at the end of the lottery.
So, Mitchell, we kind of have a little bit of a fall from grace for Adai Mara, who was at a point in our top 10, and then we just, weren't too enthused with the OKC landing spot, especially because OKC, we were convinced they were going to probably looking at salary dumping Hartenstein and keeping the rest of the guys, but instead they salary dumped Lou Dort and kept Hartenstein. So Mara is probably looking at more of a direct backup role now, but he goes to, once again, the Toronto Raptors, our boy Slice, which, I mean, is this your burner account, Mitchell? We have Slice coming out of the first round with AJ Debanza, Adai Mara, and Malik Thomas.
Yeah, those
How
are
do
a
you
lot
feel
of
about
my
Mara
guys.
at 15, though?
I think that's a good value play because,
Yeah.
I mean, outside of the lottery, he's one of the few that have top 50 upside if all things hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be plus in rebounds, plus field goal percentage. He can shoot a little bit, not too much, but at respectable levels. He's not necessarily just a lob threat. He has good touch as well. But as a center, he gives me like Andrew Bogut vibes. Like he can really play make from the post. He can anticipate double teams well and do a nice little skip pass. And he's also very reliable as a shot blocker, right? He's not like a stretch 4 by any means, but in terms of like a traditional big man that can do a little bit of those tertiary things, he's probably the most unique center that you can draft in this class in particular. So I love the value there at 15, but it is going to take a little bit longer than anticipated.
What I think is interesting about this Adai Mara pick, and let me know if you guys disagree, is that when Thomas Sorber was drafted, a rookie a couple of years ago, we were seeing him go 6th overall, 7th overall in rookie drafts, and he was coming off that ACL injury, obviously hurt his foot afterwards, right? But it seems like people have kind of learned their lesson taking these project bigs in OKC. It's just as crowded, and we just saw the first center, depending on arguably the first center, if you consider Morris Johnson to be a center, come off the board outside of the lottery, which is almost never the case in these 30-team dynasty leagues because of the positional scarcity. Do you think that's just because people are like kind of scared away by the situation in Oklahoma City? Because Adai Mara on face value is an awesome fantasy asset, and it's surprising to me that he fell this far.
Well, I'm not too surprised. Just because, like, if he was on any other landing spot, I think he'd go a lot higher. It's just the fact that OKC is very win now. It's just hard to see consistent burn.
So let me rephrase, because that's what kind of I was getting at to with Sorber, right? Is like, what do you think the difference was then and now? Because even when Sorber was drafted, it was very much like, this guy's a project, very much win now. They're going to go for it. And he was still getting drafted very highly. I'm not asking you to defend why Sorber was drafted that highly, right? But what's kind of the difference in your eyes between that pick and this pick now? Is it just the sustained success from OKC, or is it more so the type of player? And obviously, Sorber is still there in OKC, right?
Sorber is kind of a different player. He's definitely not as big as Mara. Mara is a true 7-footer. Mara's like 7'2", 7'3", whereas Sorber's like 6'10", 6'11". Sorber's
He's
a little
more
bit
like
more
a Hartenstein in a way.
Sorber's
like
a little
bruiser.
more mobile, a little bit more of a bruiser / scorer, whereas Mara is more of a rim protector, drop coverage big. They can both facilitate. I think Mara might be a better passer between the two, but Sorber feels more like the physical side as opposed to Mara seems more of skilled plus height and rim protection.
So you're saying maybe the projection at his peak is a smaller role for Mara, whereas the idea of Sorber at the time was a lot, this guy.
It was. I would say it was, but I will also say that Mara probably is at this point still has the better pedigree, mainly just because of those physical tools, his size, being able to protect the rim like that, where like that was kind of a knock on Sorber was, well, he's a little undersized for, you know, a front court position. So there might be some strength issues that he deals with. Let's say if, I don't know if this would happen, but he's in a situation where Sorber's trying to guard Joel Embiid. Well, then you will see, you know, kind of the clear size difference there. And we haven't seen much action of Sorber yet, too. So obviously, you know, it's very easy for people to kind of have a "what have you done for me lately" mindset. And so if you haven't seen Sorber, because we didn't even see him in Summer League last year either, he got hurt almost immediately. So we haven't seen just where Sorber is at in a long time. But the idea of him as a player was definitely very different to what Mara is in this draft. Okay, Taiwan Beer Hero Bears makes another pick, Cameron Carr at 16. Mitch, this feels pretty bang on with the value that we had Carr at here. So not too many notes here. This is a very solid pick to make here for Taiwan. So he's coming out of his first Angle draft so far with Cam Boozer and Cameron Carr. He's got both of the Cams. This next pick I love. So for starters, I'll say we did an end of season awards show last year. The Toronto Raptors was our favorite rebuilder. We labeled him as a future star. So we have our future star coming out of the top 15 with AJ Debonsa and Adai Mara. But the PSV Red Lions was our most improved winner from last year. So PSV, who is a European-based owner, got to take the European prospect, Sergio De La Rey. Very, very cool to see that. And I think this is an excellent addition to his team. Mitchell and I are quite adamant that we expect De La Rey to get some serious run early on because there's kind of a pretty big lack of point guards in Dallas, unless, I mean, I don't really think Cooper Flag playing direct point guard is really much of a thing anymore. We should see Kyrie Irving come back. But De La Rey, especially as a jumbo playmaker, seems to be perfect fit for Dallas. And he really shot up our big board due to that.
And what I think really reinforces that is them not bringing back Brandon Williams, who should sign somewhere else, right? But it seems like there's a huge opening. Kind of obviously Kyrie's coming back, like you said, but there's a huge spot for him in that rotation where kind of Brandon Williams was taking a lot of those minutes. Ryan Nembhard also is gone. So.
If I'm a De La Rey owner, I am 100% enthused by, number one, learning under the tutelage of Kyrie, and number two, being on the floor at the same time as Kyrie. Both of those things for De La Rey are huge wins, in my opinion.
And another thing that I want to mention is his positional size. He doesn't necessarily need to play point guard to be effective. He is a well-advertised shooter. I think he shot over 40% in that Euro competition. Didn't showcase itself in Summer League, but he was getting some crazy dimes, especially on the lobs. I think one game he had 14 assists in Summer League. Incredible player, 6'7". He could play as a secondary playmaker as well. Not saying he's going to start, but he has a little bit more upside than the traditional smaller ball dominant point guards just because of his size and length.
Absolutely. So now this brings us to number 18 overall, the Las Vegas Aces, the owner Case, who, fun fact, is the artist who made the song at the opening clip of all of our podcasts here. So always been close friends with Case. He's a great dynasty owner, great to have in the league. His Aces team went with Christian Anderson at number 18 overall. So this still feels pretty on to where we had him at value-wise on our big board, Mitch. I don't really have any complaints or he should have did this or did that. I'm pretty on board with Anderson going at 18 here. Now for you, Braxton, I mean, you know, obviously Dennis Schroeder is completing the rainbow. What has he been on, like 18 teams or something like that? So this isn't necessarily somebody we should be worried about for the next 3-4 years, but are you kind of now in the driver's seat of, Anderson's now officially a long-term project?
I think a lot of people thought he was going to be a long-term project to begin with. I'm not sure I bought into the Anderson playing a huge role year one. It was always seemed kind of more like a stash to me. And that even before Schroeder came in, that they would kind of manufacture minutes when Kobe White was on the bench. Schroeder is got another year under contract after this one, and I would anticipate the Hornets to keep him through both. I think they need him, and then the idea being at that point that would be when Christian Anderson is kind of ready to be at least the backup point guard on this Hornets team. If he's not ready by then maybe there's some cause for concern. But they and maybe long term, whether or not Kobe White, there's a lot of argument around whether Kobe is a point guard, if he's a shooting guard. I think Kobe White is a fine point guard, but if at some point if they want to move towards someone else to be kind of that ball dominant not ball dominant, but more of like a traditional distributing type point guard, similar to the way LaMelo could distribute the ball, right? Kobe White, that's not really in his forte. Okay, maybe they move to Christian Anderson long term if he's able to elevate some parts of his game. So definitely a long term play, and it seems like one you're definitely just going to want to stash in your minors for a couple years.
Yeah. So we move on now to Providence at number 19, making his second selection of the first round. So his first one, he got Kingston Flemings at 8. Now at 19, he's coming in and taking Dalen Swain. So this is kind of ignoring the poor summer league performance play and just sticking with, the pedigree as a prospect. I mean, we've seen this before. Franz Wagner was pretty bad in summer league and immediately started lighting it up once he got onto that Magic roster. So there are some of those kinds of players, and I expect Swain might fit this mold where you are elevated by better teammates. So especially if you're one of those guys who's kind of more of like a connective passer, then Swain should benefit from being with the regular Chicago Bulls roster. We remember hearing some things about that Bulls roster being like completely catastrophic in regards to like the summer league talent that was on that roster is basically just like Swain and Caleb Wilson and not a whole lot else. So it would make sense that maybe it would be a very difficult environment for somebody like Swain to thrive in. It was kind of a lot of hero ball from Caleb Wilson, if I'm being completely honest. So, but I don't blame Providence for taking him here because he is a very interesting, prospect in regards to the physical tools that he has, the type of player that he is. The type of player that he is makes a ton of sense for 9 categories. So if it does work out, this is going to be a really, really solid pick here at number 20 overall. Or sorry, 19 overall. But I'm skipping ahead to number 20 now, which is LeBaron Philon. So this is Dubai basketball making his second pick of the first round. So he went with Alan Graves at 11, and now he's taking Philon at number 20. I mean, if I'm Dubai, I'm really happy with where my 2 picks have gone so far in this draft. Now, I know we have Anthony Simons in town. LeBron just got brought in. There's a lot of guys who are capable of handling the ball and doing some playmaking on the 76ers roster. So perhaps Philon will take a little bit more time than usual, but LeBron's only there for 2 years. And of course, there will be plenty of games where either LeBron and or Joel Embiid are not playing. So I still think there's some opportunity there for Philon. Anything either of you wanted to add on him before we move on to the more, not necessarily controversial anymore, but the next guy that I'm sure we'll be talking about for a little bit.
I don't have anything on Philon specifically, but I will give some context for like these literally the next 6 picks, 20 through 25. I think 5 out of 6 of these picks got moved while on the clock.
So there was a lot of activity here.
A ton of activity of people trying to jump up ahead of each other, move down a little bit. There was so much activity in this range here. And I think that's some helpful context when understanding how these next few picks went down.
Yes, very good. So that'll take us back to New York. So they walk away from this draft or the first round of this draft so far with Darren Peterson at number 2 overall. And then New York comes in at number 21 overall via trade to grab Nate Ament. And I know Josh made sure to make a point that he grabbed his, what did they say they had him at, Mitch? Like their 5th best prospect or something along those lines. And they grabbed him at 21. So this is obviously one of those dynasty owners out there who does believe in the Nate Ament hype. I know Mitchell and I were not too on board. We kind of are, see some shades of Ricochet in there, which is probably not the best compliment on our end. But the Bucks are going through a full-scale rebuild. And if you're watching this and you're a points league player, then I would definitely bump Ament up quite a bit in regards to like big board valuation in that format. But for us in 9-cat, we're just pretty hesitant to put him that high. So, I mean, I have no issue with Ament going at 21, and I can at least – like, I don't believe in him a whole lot as a prospect, but I can at least, show some like appreciation for what New York was able to extract here at 21 overall. Somebody that some people in the dynasty circle think, or just NBA circle think could be top 6-7 valuation within this entire class. So he's definitely a very interesting prospect for sure. All right, now we start to round out what I will call Slice's masterclass of a first round here. He's already got AJ Debinsa, he's already got a Mara, and now at 22 overall, he's taking Malik Thomas. So the Cavaliers have been making some moves lately, and some of these moves do affect Thomas a little bit. Regardless, this is a John Calipari guard. I probably don't need to say much more than that, but I will. A very, very elite scoring talent, absolutely lit summer league on fire. So we've seen with some of these rookies on the Cavs lately, they've been, I mean, aside from like Mobley and stuff, like a good example is Jalen Tyson, who had a pretty small role in his first year in the NBA, and then it got a lot bigger in year 2. That same thing might happen for Thomas, but I'd still expect Thomas to check in for 50-ish games for a handful of minutes on each of those. But I'm thinking year 2 Thomas is when things are going to start getting pretty crazy for him.
Yeah,
go ahead, Mitch.
Sorry, go. Okay. I'm very excited about Malik Thomas, and a lot of the reason why he was pushed out of the first round is because Darius Acuff was his teammate, right, in Arkansas, who really overshadowed Malik Thomas, and for good reason. You know, Darius Acuff is a bona fide stud, right? He is, a top 10 player in a very stacked draft, but that goes without showing that Malik Thomas is a really great prospect in himself too, right? He's 6'4", shooting guard, pretty efficient from 3. I think he shot just below 40% at Arkansas as a secondary creator. And what's really impressive, and I know it's just summer league, he led the entire summer league in points per game and above 28. So he has the scoring repertoire. He's very crafty. He's very creative. A little bit undersized from the 2-guard spot if he's not a primary playmaker. But I think if he can find a role as a 6-man type of talent, bang on value outside of the top 20 with Malik Thomas. Like, what if he becomes like a Jordan Clarkson type of player who at some point was a pretty valuable asset in like the top 150, scored 20 points per game in a 6-man of the year campaign in Utah. Maybe Malik Thomas can do that with a little bit of rebounds, like 4 rebounds, 3 assists. And the thing that Jordan Clarkson doesn't have, that Malik Thomas does have, is that he has the ability to rack up some steals and defensive stats. So there's a little bit more of that 2-way upside for Malik Thomas there, as not just a secondary or primary scorer.
I'm
very good.
I just want to add, Andrew, I'm with you. I think I'm cooled off a little bit on his year 1 prospects, and maybe even year 2 after the Peyton Watson acquisition. Not that Peyton Watson's going to be playing much of the 2, but we talked a little bit about this in the Peyton Watson Player of the Month we did on Patreon, where because they're so top heavy at that 3, 4, even 5 range, that some of these guys might be shifted down a little bit just to get them on the floor, right? Well, we might be seeing Jalen Tyson play some more of the 2, Peyton Watson playing, more of the 3, and Sam Merrill, I think, is really going to be a thorn in Malik Thomas's side in terms of immediate playing time. And they have no reason not to play Sam Merrill. He's been incredible. I think what he really needs to do is outplay somebody like Craig Porter Jr. or Tyrese Proctor, which I think is quite possible. But the idea being that, okay, instead of Craig Porter Jr. coming off the bench to be the backup point guard, we'll just shift down Donovan Mitchell or James Harden, whoever's the 2. And then they'll play kind of Malik Thomas as that off-ball secondary creator. So I think as opposed to competing with guys like Jalen Tyson and Sam Merrill for straight up minutes at the 2, he needs to, display that he's more valuable coming off the bench than Craig Porter Jr. And I don't think that's something a lot of people are talking about. So,
yeah, it makes me almost a little bit more confident when you paint that as he mainly just needs to beat out Craig Porter and Tyrese Proctor. And it's like, okay, I think we got a good chance at that. But like you said, Sam Merrill's going to be a thorn in the side. The development will be a little bit slower than we anticipate. But let's go to someone else who is coming into this draft pretty raw. This is a 5-star recruit. This is somebody who, had things gone well, could have potentially been like a top 10 pick in this draft. And in real life, he goes to Boston, which from what, Mitchell and I are kind of going on the side of Boston's actually doing an extremely good job developing talent lately. So Chris Sinak went at 23 overall, and this goes to the Taiwan Beer Hero Bears. So our new guy making some big moves here, getting Cameron Carr, getting Cam Boozer, and now he is getting Chris Sinak here at 23. So pretty good first round to start off for one of our new teams, the Hero Bears. Sinak is someone where, I know Boston has made some pretty big changes recently. Not a ton of changes to the front court. They brought in Mitchell Robinson. They kept Neemias Queta long-term, both of which are great things to see. But if we're looking at Sinak as maybe a backup power forward, then I think I'm not exactly sure what the lineup's going to look like, but I think that means he's starting behind Jason Tatum, or potentially he has to compete with Jordan Walsh for minutes there. It's still kind of difficult to really paint Sinak as a 4 or a 5. Maybe he's kind of just a hybrid between the two, but there's a little bit of competition for him in both of those spots. So this one might be a bit of a slow burn, but the physical tools are there. Absolutely. Like the pedigree of prospect is there. He's just kind of coming together a little bit more slowly than people anticipated, which is why he slipped in the draft. But there's a lot of signs there that this could be a very good player. Okay. I know I didn't want to go into too much detail on trades, but the next 2 picks were trades that our friend Mark, the Houston Comets, made to get on the clock for both 24 and 25 overall. And I see both of these players he picked as stashes. However, both of these guys were really good in the previous league they're playing in, both the NCAA and overseas in the NBL for each of them respectively. But I want to talk about number 24 overall. So that pick originally belonged to the Lakers. And the Comets offered Walter Clayton to move up from pick 36 to 24. So that's Walter Clayton and pick 36 for pick 24 overall. I mean, I know I talked recently about, Clayton having some serious opportunity to really step up in that guard rotation from Memphis next year. Like, yes, Ty Jerome is probably still the best guard on the team, but could Clayton maybe overtake Scottie Pippen, or could Clayton maybe start molding into more of a 2 as opposed to more of a point guard? There's kind of a lot of things we're waiting to see happen for that Memphis roster. But when Mark made that trade, he came in to get Bennett Sturts. So this becomes Walter Clayton and pick 36 for Bennett Sturts. So, I mean, Mitch and I liked watching Sturts play in Iowa for sure. Super entertaining player. It's just that landing spot in OKC. He's buried. He's playing behind a former or perennial MVP contender in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So, I mean, do you kind of get the vision here, Mitch?
I get the vision, but we haven't seen Sturts play off ball too much. He was so on ball in Iowa, and also I believe it was Drake before he transferred over. And we haven't seen him play a lot of movement off the ball. He was such a primary ball handler that I just don't know, and I'm not too confident in that opportunity at OKC, because OKC, yes, they have SGA. Then their secondary ball handler is Jalen Williams, which they're going to stagger off in rotations. But then AJ Mitchell really developed himself into a really good primary ball handler as well off the bench. So he's going to have 3 really, and even Jared McCain too had a little bit of on-ball moments in the playoffs, who is looking at and on the draft, or on the betting odds, is one of the favorites to be a 6th man of the year candidate. I don't believe that to be the case personally. I think Jared McCain is good, but not that good. But there's so many depth at the guard spots, especially at the ball handlers side of things, not just off ball, where I just don't know if Bennett Sturts can provide that type of value since we haven't really seen him in an off ball role, and with so many others above him on the totem pole.
Yep. He went with another kind of project stash at 25 overall, which is Kareem Lopez. I like Lopez a lot as a prospect. It's just that Memphis landing spot. He plays a very similar position-wise to Cam Boozer. There's already a good amount of talent in the front court in Memphis. So maybe if he's able to play the 3, things might go a little bit differently for him. But even then, you got names like Cedric Howard there. So the landing spot, not the most ideal for Lopez. However, I haven't looked at Mark's roster. I don't know what his exact plans are, but names like Brown, Sturts, and Lopez, perhaps they're like a year or 2 away for some serious impact. But I mean, I do like Sturts and Lopez a lot as a prospect, especially Lopez. He's even somebody I talked about on the Locked On podcast, one of the players I chose to talk about. Lopez is very, very intriguing to me. I just really wish he went to a different team. Like at the time, I would have loved for him to go to the Lakers, but I believe he got picked 1 pick before that, and then we took Carr after that, if I remember correctly. So we'll see. But we didn't get to see him in Summer League either, which obviously I could be having a completely different discussion right now if he did ball out in Summer League, but he got hurt almost immediately. So it'll be a little bit until we see Lopez again. But again, I do like him as a prospect. And then I'll move us to 26 overall. So New York getting in their fair share of guys who kind of have a controversial opinion on them in the NBA dynasty community. At 26, our boys at Point Made take Jaden Clayton. So now this is a team that took both Nate Ament and Jaden Quaintance in this first round. That's glass cannon stuff right there. It could go really well or it could go really horribly. I feel like there's not going to be a middle ground. It's just there'll be elite picks or we kind of expected this to happen. It's going to be one of those two, but hopefully for them, they become elite picks. We will see. And then they took also this New York was back on the board again for 27 overall, and they took Taurus Reed Jr. So he is not really a project. He's more of a kind of a ready-made player, a little bit on the older side, whereas Quaintance and Ament and Peterson are all very, very young in regards to this New York first-round draft haul. Reed's on the older side, but I don't blame them for picking him, especially because we've been adamant that San Antonio is searching quite a bit for front court rotation solutions aside from just, Luke Cornett and Harrison Barnes.
And I think what makes this pick even better in terms of like value wise is that he went back to back Quaintance and Taurus Reed. So that goes to show that he has some sort of handcuff behind Quaintance if Quaintance doesn't pan out, and Taurus Reed does become that secondary rotation center spot directly backing up Victor Wembanyama. So
that is a great
I think
point.
it's a 40 type of chess move there that the Point Made team made. And I just want to give them a little shout out on that.
I love only in a 30 team league, you'll see a handcuff to a handcuff. You're not going to see that anywhere
a handcuff else. To a handcuff. Oh, that's so good. It is true, though. Okay, then we have the Taiwan Bear Hero Bears making yet another first-round pick, which he took Koa Pete at 28 overall, pretty similar to the big board range that we had him at. But then we see Bruce Thornton creep into our first round here. So PSV picked at 29. He went with Thornton. I know Houston has been looking for one of those kind of spark plug scoring options off the bench, and we really believe Thornton could fill that role. Kind of reminds me of something like Patty Mills types of vibes where, I mean, for us in 9-cat, I don't know if he's going to offer much outside of scoring, but he could be somebody that comes in is capable of popping off for 15 points and not that much time to help the Rockets get to a win or whatever it might be. So he is interesting. And of course, even though he was a second rounder in real life, he was immediately given a guaranteed contract by Houston right out the gate, which obviously paints a very clear picture of what their intentions are with him going into his first season. He's an upperclassman. He was captain of Ohio State for 4 straight years, their all-time leading scorer. This is definitely not one of those projects. This is one of those, we need a ready-made guy to come in and play this role immediately. So that's what they got with Thornton in the second round. Well, let's give a little love to Mutombo here. At number 30th overall, his Flint Tropics take Zubi Ejiofor. So knowing Mutombo, he is a real-life Atlanta Hawks fan. So, I mean, props to him getting Ejiofor here. But I think the pendulum kind of swung too far in the direction, like the other direction for Ejiofor. Like, he probably should be in the 20s. So seeing him here at 30, I think is looking like really good value for Mutombo and the Flint Tropics here. And Ejiofor is one of those guys who makes a ton of sense in regards to 9 category, the types of numbers of very diverse stats that he's able to put up. The only concern is, his real life ability to get on the floor. He's an undersized big man. He's like a 6'9" big man, someone who might even be capable of playing center. So it's almost like they got essentially another version of Onyeka Okongwu. But, at 30 overall, I really like that value grab for the Tropics there. All right, boys. So that officially ends our first round. So now we are moving into the second round. And in the second round, I believe who is this? The Syracuse Nationals. Add your team logo, please, Sonny. The Syracuse Nationals took Joshua Jefferson at 31 overall. So Jefferson is another one of those guys that really, really struggled in summer league play. He's one of those guys where I expect he'll probably be better on the actual NBA roster that he belongs to, but very, very weak summer league performance. And this is a guy who was an upperclassman too. You would have expected him to be a lot stronger in that type of environment. So this is another one of those. Well, he was still picked in the first round, so I'm going to pick him here just to kind of match what his draft grade was, where I know on our big boards, Mitch, we were not very kind to Jefferson. I think he's more down in like this 36, 37-ish range. But let's bring us to a fun one here. So every year in the draft, you'll usually get at least 1 to 2 guys picked in the 50s who end up getting a guaranteed contract. One of the best success stories I can name in recent memory of that is Tumane Kamara. I think he was picked like 55-ish, got a 1-year deal by the Suns immediately, and then was immediately traded over to Portland, and the rest is history. Toumani Camara is one of their key role players. Braxton, your Charlotte team at number 32 grabbed Emmanuel Sharp. This was a 50s pick who was taken by the Sacramento Kings, given a guaranteed contract. And this was somebody who was a staple for the Houston Cougars teams, one of their better players, and someone who offers really, really good two-way production. So how excited are you to have Sharp on your roster?
Very, and I don't mean to immediately demean your point, but Sharp was drafted 45th overall, so close enough to 50.
I don't know why I thought he was in the 50s, but okay, still later.
Might as well
that
late in the draft, right? But what's really interesting about this pick is I was fully prepared to take Sharp at 30th overall. I actually traded with the Flint Tropics to move down 2 spots. I picked up an extra second-round pick in the process. He was able to move up and grab Zuby, and I was going to take Sharp at 30 anyway, so it worked out quite well. And for me, my kind of mindset this late in the draft, and yes, 30 is still the first round for this draft, right? But in some leagues don't even draft that deep in terms of 30 players, right? So my thought process, especially with how deep this league is and, how barren the waiver wire is I'm looking for more immediate production this late as opposed to any kind of swing for the fences. Some people have a complete opposite philosophy where it's like, okay, this pick is whatever. I'm just going to kind of take some huge upside play. Maybe this guy never plays. Maybe he's nothing. No, I'm going for somebody who I know is going to be in the rotation year one, who is going to be able to put up stats for me. And that's what I'm doing here with Emmanuel Sharp. This guy is like the quintessential archetype for bench player for me in 30-team leagues, where I love like the backup point guard, defensive minded. Like he'll get 3 assists and a steal and like 6 points and call it a day. And that's all that I want here with Sharp. If there's room for more, awesome. But I think it doesn't get much more of a floor play this late in the draft. And again, this is just outside the first round. This is how deep, these 30-team leagues can go and do go for those who don't play in leagues this deep, is, a first-round pick. And we're outside of the first round, right? But a first-round pick can be someone who was taken 45th in the real draft. And, it's that guaranteed contract that really sold it for me, Andrew. I'm not taking somebody on a two-way, maybe ever. I'm looking, especially as you move down the order, I'm looking for draft capital and or guaranteed deals. And that leads directly to production most times. So we saw it with Sion James last year. He kind of fell a lot, even despite being picked early in the second round. And I always kind of viewed that as a mistake. And I was able to grab him like 40th overall or something like that. And Sion James is not some kind of world beater, right? In terms of dynasty value or fantasy value. But that's kind of what you're looking for this late. The pick can be nothing, or it can be something that helps you both now and a few years from now. So, that's kind of where my head was at.
I like it. I like it a lot. All right, this next guy I want to talk about for a little bit. Trevon Brazile. So we just saw Denver offload Peyton Watson. They brought in what Mitch very accurately described as a Band-Aid solution in DeMar DeRozan. But let me direct your attention to Trevon Brazile here. This is somebody who the Denver Nuggets selected in the early portion of the second round and did give a guaranteed contract to. Brazile is a Arkansas Razorback, so this is another John Calipari player. Unfortunately, he's not a guard, though, so the Calipari magic doesn't apply as much. But Brazile is a very lengthy, athletic player who has a very friendly 9-category game. So we're seeing here a guy who's likely going to start off in a bench role with a guaranteed contract, but with a Peyton Watson-sized hole on the team. So I really like his ability to potentially play for some very viable backup minutes, maybe becoming potentially a direct backup to Aaron Gordon, because there's some other bench competition that's not going to be like any crazy competition for him to deal with. I mean, we got like Tyus Jones and Marvin Bagley and a couple other names that I don't really see being too threatening to Brazile. If there's any other front court guys I'm missing off the top of my head right now, then definitely let me know, boys. But Brazile went to PSV at 33 overall here. So this is an excellent pick, in my opinion, by you, Ignaz, PSV owner. I really, I think Brazile now, in my eyes, with Watson gone, Brazile should probably be picked in the late 20s, in my opinion.
His biggest competition is going to be Spencer Jones. And
there we go.
Depending on how highly
Jones might even start.
Jones, Yeah, I mean, I like Jones a lot, and the contract they gave him wasn't huge, right? But in terms of the luxury tax bill, they picked up in terms of to match that offer that OKC gave to Spencer Jones, really illustrated that they view him as a big part of this rotation, and probably anticipated Peyton Watson leaving, so they viewed grabbing him as much more crucial, right? So if Brazil is able to kind of stay on par or outplay Spencer Jones, I mean, who knows? I'm right there with you, Andrew. I think there's, especially after Watson is gone, I think there's a lot of upside here for him. Maybe even year one, depends on how ready he looks kind of out of the gate. But this bench on the Nuggets, Alpha Diallo too is someone who I think could maybe play a little bit of a factor. He is just on the $1.3 million deal. It's at rookie scale minimum, but Diallo seems like, to me, someone they want to get involved at some point. So Spencer Jones and Diallo are kind of the main concerns for me. DeRozan, obviously, I don't know if DeRozan's going to start, but there is kind of a hole there in the rotation.
So now we're at number 34 overall. Let me check to see whose pick this was, because they did not put their logo on yet. Seattle. Seattle took the Henry Visar. So this is okay. So this is actually someone who was picked in the 50s and ended up getting a guaranteed deal. But with Visar, you got competition for direct backup minutes with like Jock Lendale. He's probably going to be competing with Zuby Ejiofor as well. This is a stretch big man. So I mean, he's bigger than a Davis Bertans, but that's kind of like what he might be like, or maybe he might be like a Mo Wagner, although Mo kind of had some handles and mobility, and I don't really think Visar has that. So, but he is a stretch big. It's kind of the idea, like a very, very, very light version of Brook Lopez. He definitely doesn't have the defensive acumen that Brook does, but that's kind of the idea. So that's, this is pretty around the range of where we had Visar graded at, but I think this is a pretty good value grab. Next up on 35 overall, Sacramento took Ryan Conwell. So I was super high on Conwell, especially prior to recent changes that the Miami Heat made. Like, I think now that I'm looking at this, Sacramento probably might be my favorite draft haul of the day. Darius Acuff, Braden Burries, and Ryan Conwell. I think that just might edge out what Slice's haul was for me for his Raptors team. I might have to give it to Sacramento on this one. Now, we did just see Miami added Klay Thompson. So that does directly affect our sweet Ryan Conwell stonks. But I do like him a lot. He's another guy that was given a guaranteed deal, drafted early in the second round. We gave him kind of a 20s grade. And now that I see him going at 35 overall, I'm not mad about that, just because the Heat did get Klay Thompson. But also, we're talking about a 37-year-old Klay Thompson. So it's just like, if Conwell is blocked, it's maybe for a year-ish, or I don't necessarily hate the possibility of him outplaying a Klay Thompson or a Tim Hardaway Jr. I do really think Conwell is a solid player. So, and I think he's someone that Eric Spoelstra is going to like a lot as well. Now, this is another person where another guy that we gave kind of a 20s grade, and there wasn't really much changes to his team to affect where he went. So I was very surprised to see the slide for Alex Caravan. So we mentioned the Lakers getting pick 36 in a trade here, and he ended up getting Caravan, which Mitch is someone we have at a first-round grade on our big board. Granted, it's a late first-rounder, but still up there. So a little bit of value here for Phil's Lakers teams in Caravan. And correct me if I'm wrong, the Kings haven't really brought in any threats to his playing time this offseason, correct?
Correct. Not that I know of. And also DeMar DeRozan, who played some power forward, small forward, has been bought out, and also is now on the Denver Nuggets that we previously discussed. So a little bit about Caravan. He started a little slow in Summer League. A lot of it was due to that ankle injury, but once he started to get his rhythm going and also his cardio up to speed, we saw a pretty nice 20 point performance on pretty solid efficiency. And he's the type of player that will rise up to the occasion with a better team around him. Similar to your analogy of like a Franz Wagner, he's not going to light you up on his ISO play. He's really more of a connective piece that can hit some threes, play some defense. He has a little bit of upside in terms of like out of position blocks, which is interesting for someone who's not entirely the most athletic, but it's due to that IQ and that timing that Alex Caravan has. So I think this is a steal for Phil and his Lakers at 36. I think he's going to outperform his draft position. And he's just going to be maybe a 10-year staple in the league, not necessarily with like top 100 upside, but maybe at like top 150, top 175. He's going to really have a role in the league long term just because of that tertiary offense, the passing, the high IQ, and a little bit of defense, just because he's such a great rotational piece.
What I think is interesting, I think this was kind of a trend we saw across all the leagues that we are in, all three of us. We saw Karaban fall to the mid-30s in just about every situation. And I just thought it was really interesting. I mean, the Kings are top-heavy in a sense that they have a lot of big players. You know, they have Sabonis, Cardwell, and then Reynaud at the 5. But then they also have Keegan Murray and Precious Achiuwa at the 4, right? So they're going to want to probably play all 5 of those guys. Maybe we see Keegan Murray get shifted down. Maybe we see DeAndre Hunter play a lot at the 3. Maybe they have him play some 2 in some lineups. I don't know. The Kings are kind of all over the place. Nick Clifford is going to need to get on the floor. So it's a little bit murky for me for Karaban year 1, just because they have all of those guys who are not necessarily similar players, but just similar in size, who really can't play like the 2, you know, and that's kind of the main sticking point is they have a lot of other guys that need, like, they're going to play Dylan Cardwell probably out of position at the 4, right? They're probably going to play Reynaud a little bit out of position at the 4 just because they're going to have Sabonis on the floor. They're going to have Achiuwa on the floor. So there's just a lot of moving parts. But I think that this, to me, Mitch, I agree with your point that this is definitely a 30-team guy, whereas like he's probably going to be putting up some stats. He's not really going to like just rank highly and might not ever be a redraft guy, but this is definitely going to be a solid 30-team low-end bench guy. Kind of look at, like, I think Jordan Walsh is like not comparable in terms of player, but in terms of level of asset. Like, you would never look at Jordan Walsh in anything shallower than a 30-team probably, but like he's kind of a decent piece just because he's going to be on the floor. And that's really all you can ask for after a certain point in the draft. So
very good. And of course, my last point to Phil: add your goddamn team logo. All right. So we're gonna pick up the pace here to get through the rest of the second round. We're approaching an hour and a half, and it's usually the absolute limit we want to get our pods to go to. So there's that Karaban pick there. Next up at 37, the Sonics took Jacoby Gillespie. This is a defensive menace, an absolute pest, an extremely high steal rate, and this is likely something you will also see happen for him when he's in the G League this year. You'll probably be seeing him with over 2 steals per game in the G League. Someone who has kind of a little bit of juice to him if he does get some legit NBA minutes. And I think that the Spurs just went all out with the identity of we're drafting dogs only in this draft. Guys like GSB, who we'll soon discuss, also Malik Brown, like very, very defensive-oriented, defensive-minded players is what the Spurs did across the board. So that's where GSB went here. Now, at 38 overall, I'm calling this a steal. Baba Miller at 38 overall. Baba Miller was taken by the Clippers, got a guaranteed contract. This is essentially the reincarnation of what we wanted Jonathan Isaac to be. Like, this is kind of that same similar level prospect of like coming in very raw, still developing a jumper, but crazy physical tools, athleticism. Like, it could work out really, really well. This is definitely not somebody you should be giving a first round grade to just because he is so raw and he's had a while to develop that jumper and it still isn't fully coming to fruition. But at least with that guaranteed contract from the Clippers and the Clippers essentially going through a rebuild, the Clippers not necessarily having the strongest front court, I think Miller can make some serious noise. And this is someone who I think would be useful as like a rebounds, steals, and blocks kind of specialist. Ugonya Onyenso went at number 39 overall to our Chicago Bulls team. Solid pick here. He is an injury away from being the backup center on Detroit. So definitely really big fan. I think that's pretty bang on with where we had him at value-wise on our big board. Solid pick for you, Chicago. Who is this at number 40? The Nelson Giants. Nelson Giants took Richie Saunders. He's coming off a big injury, so it's going to be a little bit of time before we see him. Now, I know I've already talked about teams like the Monarchs and the Raptors as kind of my favorite total draft, like hauls that they got. But I think I'm going to highlight the Lakers here as maybe my favorite second round performance. The Lakers had no first round picks. He did, but he traded out of them. But in the second round, we have Alex Karaban. Now at number 41 overall, we have Isaiah Evans. And then soon to be discussed, we have at 45, Nick Martinelli. I think that is a great haul in the second round for the Lakers. Isaiah Evans was the 33rd overall pick in the real life draft. And I think we have him ranked around maybe a little bit better than this value-wise, but the Minnesota Timberwolves did gut out a bit of their depth recently, so there could be some opportunity for Evans there. More of a 3-and-D type of talent. Nothing crazy 9-category stat-wise, but he is definitely someone who could find his way on the floor with his athleticism and shooting ability. So solid pick for the Lakers there. We go down to our first and only pick for the Victoria Titans. He took Braden Smith at 42, someone as Mitch is quite fond of. Mitch loves him a good point guard. Isaiah Nelson went at number 43 overall. Going to be a while before we see him. Who took him at 43? Seattle once again. So Isaiah, we'll see you soon. But I know guys like Zach at Dizzle Dynasty are super high on him. I think this is a steal for Dylan Mitchell at 44 by the Taiwan Beer Hero Bears. Just because of that Boston pedigree, I think we're really starting to turn the corner of acknowledging Boston as a very good developmental destination. So I like what the possibilities could be for Dylan Mitchell, who does have a very friendly 9-category game. 45 overall. This is the last of the kind of second round haul that the Lakers got. Nick Martinelli. Martinelli is an extremely unique player. He reminds me of like a Danilo Gallinari who has a very post-oriented game to him. He's a very, very odd player. There's not very many players like him, but I think the Clippers are doing a pretty good job with some of these kind of funkier players. So I like the landing spot for him on that team. I think just that University of Northwestern is kind of pumping out a couple of these, second round talents. We had Brooke Barnheiser last year, Martinelli this year, but Martinelli's been averaging over 20 a game each of those years that he was there. So this is a very interesting pick by Brooklyn here, and he had a pretty strong summer league. He's a very efficient shooter as well. So the size and the shooting, I think he could be like a baby Gallinari essentially in the future. Definitely not as good as the real Danilo, though. The real Danilo was an absolute baller. The quad god, Quadir Copeland, made a pretty early appearance here at 46 overall. He was taken by Dubai. Kind of a surprise for me on that one, but I know there are some quad god believers out there. He is actually someone who went undrafted by Houston, got a 2-way contract. This was my first and only pick of the draft at 47. My team, Real Madrid Baloncesto, snuck in to take Malik Brown, the reigning ACC Defensive Player of the Year and Sixth Man of the Year. I do not expect offensive production from this man whatsoever, nor do I need it. I have tons of offense on my team. What I would love to get, though, is more defense, and that's where this guy comes in. The ability to clog passing lanes, get deflections, get steals. He'll get blocks as well. He'll finish dunks when need be. So just a defensive specialist is what I went for here at 47. So, and it's one of those Spurs players who, again, I said was real. The Spurs were very focused on taking super defensive-oriented players. 48 overall, our friend Case at the Las Vegas Aces took Tyler Bilodeau, someone who could easily make it just purely based off being 6'7" and a lights-out shooter. We got our friend Slice with one. I think this will be his final selection, taking Bryce Hopkins, another solid 2-way player for Denver. Jaden Bradley goes at 50 overall to Chicago. Brax, I think I might be approaching some of those placeholder here. I know there are some guys who the guy that they meant to draft wasn't in the draft pool yet, and they took a placeholder instead. So let me know when I get to any of those. Brisbane Bullets, I think this is his first appearance in this draft as well. He took Toby Awaka at 51. I think this is Singapore Slingers' first draft appearance as well. He took Jack Cale at 52 and Otega Owe at 53, which for you, Joy, Singapore, that's pretty awesome. 52 and 53, taking Cale and Owe, especially because Cale could potentially be special if he ever does make his way back overseas from Germany. Mutombo and the Flint Tropics took Ischenko at 54. Hero Bears got Felix Okpara at 55. That's, in my opinion, a steal. Okpara is an Anthony Davis injury away from being some at least backup or minimum third string minutes on center minutes on that Washington Wizards team. We have Dix listed here as 56. That's the placeholder?
Yeah, I'll pause you here. So this is kind of what you run into in 30-team leagues this late in the round, in the second round, I should say, is that people are kind of just throwing whatever sticks at the wall or throwing whatever at the wall and seeing what sticks, I should say. And Josh Dix was a placeholder for actually Nate Biddle here from the Toronto Raptors, who is such a deep cut that he was actually not in the player pool. He's only on an Exhibit 10 contract with Toronto. And what is this? Dubai here that scooped him up. Grabbing a center this late in the second round, one is pretty good from a positional scarcity standpoint. Right? If you're going to take a stab at someone, a center is not a bad idea, especially in terms of someone of Biddle's size. That alone could be something that kind of gets him a spot in the league. But at this point in the draft, like I said, if you get anyone who ends up on a standard contract, I mean, you've knocked it out of the park. You're really not. There's really not a lot of times you're getting anything that's worthwhile here. So that's kind of the thought process of, oh, I'm going to take someone who's not even in the player pool who I think might have a shot at being anything.
I like it. 57, PSV takes Michael Ajayi, which is someone who I feel like has been in draft conversations for what's felt like 3 or 4 years. He finally lands in the NBA on a two-way at Charlotte.
Mexico City. I'll pause you here at 58. Okay. 58 is another placeholder. So it's going to be Rafael Castro, who has had a lot of weirdness in his offseason as well. I actually don't think he's even signed on that two-way still. We talked a little bit about this in our podcast we did with Finn Keel a week or two ago. And there was just some weirdness around Castro. And can we verify that real quick if he's actually on a two-way or if he?
I think it's still kind of in limbo.
So again, though, with the same thing with Biddle, the thought is I'm just going to grab a center here this late in the draft, someone who has interesting fantasy outlook or just the idea of Rafael Castro is really nice. So Mexico City went ahead and grabbed him here at 58. Knowing very well there was going to be a possibility that he's never added to the pool, right? So, this is such a deep cut that he's not even on an Exhibit 10. Did we? That's right? He's not even on Exhibit 10. He's just kind of
he's either on a two-way or he's on nothing. I'm seeing news reports that report the initial two-way signing that this was back in June. But then there's some notes, especially when we were talking to Finn Keel, who has close connections to the Bucks. I think when we had that conversation about a weekish ago, he said that Castro deal wasn't officially yet signed. So I think what we can at least assume right now is he has a two-way contract offered to him and has just not done anything about it yet.
So with that being said, I think we talked a little bit about there was potential, with some of the new eligibility rules for the NCAA. There's a very high possibility that Mexico City's just completely punted this pick at 58, right? If he never gets added to the pool, if he goes back to college or something like that, you've lost it, obviously, right? So that's just another testament to how deep cuts we're getting here this late in the draft.
Now, Beijing at 59 took LeJay Jones, the surprise pick that went to the Warriors that I felt like was never shown on any big boards at all and then kind of just appeared on draft night. Well, then we get to you at 60, Mitch. Was this your pick or did you also do a placeholder?
This was my pick.
Okay, yeah. Who we got here?
We got Trey Donaldson, who was an undrafted player from Miami. But the thing about Miami, they always give some sort of opportunity to these undrafted two-way players that they sign. So Trey Donaldson is a two-way player for 1 year under contract, and he showcased some pretty good production in Summer League. He almost got a triple-double on his last game. His game kind of reminds me of a Jordan McLaughlin, a little bit undersized, but can do a little bit of everything, high IQ player. Had some pretty nice stats at the University of Miami. Never actually saw him play in college, but at this point of the draft, I'm just looking at statistical production in college and hoping that it translates over to the NBA, especially at pick 60. And knowing that Miami does give a little bit more opportunity than some of these other teams to these undrafted players. Shout out to Kendrick Nunn. Maybe Trey Donaldson does a little bit of something that I'm not really investing too much into. I traded away Jordan Clarkson for this pick. I'm almost above the salary cap at that point, so I had to make this trade or else I was going to give him away for free. So why not take a gamble at pick 60, even though I do really respect Jordan Clarkson. So let's see what happens with Trey Donaldson. Not expecting much, but a fun little gamble on my end.
Mitch, I love your point about the landing spot. If there's ever a team or ever a situation to grab a two-way player from, it's from one of those teams that just did a massive consolidation move where it's not even clear who the bench is going to be yet, right? There is a world where Trey Donaldson plays so well in leading up to the season that maybe he sees rotation minutes, not night one, but eventually, right? So they have some older guys on their bench, Tim Hardaway, Klay Thompson, right? They're very prone to injury. It's very up in the air in terms of who's going to carve out what size role in Miami. And we're talking about pick 60 here, so it doesn't really matter, right? But if there ever was a swing to take, it would be that one.
That's right. So
Appreciate
that is 60 picks done and in the book. Once again, huge shout out to the members of the Angle Dynasty League. Thank you for your patience in getting this draft started, but now it's done and we've rolled into the off season. So next couple of videos you can expect from us are covering the large amount of trades that have gone down in the Angle Dynasty League over this offseason. We haven't been able to visit those trades yet, but we will. We'll have all these graphics to show, and we have so many trades that have taken place that we're going to have to break it up into a part 1 episode and a part 2 episode. There is a lot of really, really good transactions that we plan to cover. So thank you all for watching today. We really appreciate you. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Leave a like, leave a comment. Who do you think had the best draft? Who do you think had the best second round? What was one of your favorite picks on here? And we'll see you all next time.